Welcome to class. Today we're going to learn about how we learn, ineffective study strategies that we should avoid using, and effective study strategies that you can use to help you prepare for tests and quizzes. Before we begin, we should go over our learning objectives. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to summarize why masked and block practice are ineffective study strategies, summarize why reflective, varied, and spaced practice are effective study strategies, differentiate between an effective and ineffective study strategy, develop study strategies based off reflective, varied, and spaced practice, and revise study strategies you currently use to incorporate effective study strategies. Before we cover what's considered an effective study strategy, we should cover strategies that most students use that experts find are less effective. One of the most popular studying strategies that students rely on is reading textbooks and notes that cover the content they are being tested on. Rereading is one of the most ineffective study strategies students can rely on. Rereading is considered a low-effort activity where students do not actually have to apply any of the knowledge that they are reading about. The strategy of studying during one long cram session the night before a test falls under the strategy of mass practice. The main issue with mass practice is that when students only study for one long big study session, especially if what they are doing is only rereading, they risk only remembering what they studied for a short amount of time. Not everything we immediately learn and store in our short-term memory transfers to our long-term memory. And retrieval from long-term memory is important towards building knowledge. The goal of studying should be to learn the content for the long term, not memorize it for a day. The idea of practicing one specific learning strategy until you feel you have mastered it is called blocked practice. There are two major issues with blocked practice. The first issue is that it leads students to believe they have mastered content, but in reality they may not know as much as they think they do. The other issue is that students do not learn how to differentiate between what they are studying and other similar learning objectives. This causes them to have trouble using what they studied in a setting where they're not specifically told what learning targets they will need to use to answer the problems. For example, baseball players who practice hitting pitches in a blocked format performed worse than those who practice hitting pitches in a varied format. Now that we've covered several ineffective strategies, let's go over what works. Retrieval practice requires students to recall information from their memories in order to either answer questions, solve problems, or even simply reflect on a topic. The act of retrieving what we know helps to further build upon and reinforce the knowledge that we retrieve, so that it will be easier to recall the information in the future. The act of retrieving information and then either updating it with new information or realizing you've forgotten much of the information and then taking the time to practice and correct yourself can help build better mental connections for future recall. Spaced practice is the practice of using several smaller study sessions compared to one or two big long study sessions. As we covered, mass practice is ineffective because too much content is stored in the short-term memory, much of which fails to transfer over to our long-term memory storage. Spaced practice is beneficial because it allows students time to transition information from their short-term memories to their long-term memories. After information has been stored, we can then use retrieval practice to build upon what they previously studied. These repeated, short retrieval study sessions allow for consistent reconfirmation of what we do and do not know from our study material. When using varied practice, you will study many different learning objectives at the same time. The idea of using varied practice requires students to practice similar learning strategies together in a mixed manner. By mixing your practice, you teach yourself to differentiate between the different learning objectives, allowing you to better identify how to answer problems that involve you having to identify which learning objective to use. As we previously mentioned, during a study at Cal Poly Tech, a set of baseball players practiced hitting pitches in the blocked format, where they knew what pitches would be thrown to them, and the varied format, where the pitches were random. The players who practiced hitting random pitches performed better when it came time to hit in the game, while players who practiced hitting in a blocked manner appeared to perform better in practice, but struggled more in real game situations. The same format can be applied to school. How well would we perform on tests asking us to solve story problems related to the surface area of different shapes if all we did was practice finding the surface area of each individual shape, where we know ahead of time what formula we need to use to find the answer? Now that we've covered what does and does not work, let's finally go over some specific study activities that you can use to help you prepare for tests and quizzes. Using practice tests is a great study method that students should utilize. Taking practice tests follow the retrieval and varied study strategies that we covered in previous slides. It is recommended that students create and take their own practice tests, as this requires them to put in more effort than to simply rely on ones their teachers give them, as this will lead to more learning. The act of testing drastically increases a student's ability to retain more information, even if the student is self-testing. The sooner you are tested after learning something new, the more you are likely to retain the information. However, when it comes to self-testing, you do need to be careful. You do need to make sure to check your own answers to your self-testing or get feedback from others. Without feedback, you may accidentally learn incorrect information. Flashcards are a popular and effective study strategy that all students can use. Flashcards rely on the use of retrieval practice, can be used to vary what terms or questions you are studying, and can easily be used in small space study sessions. The act of retrieval, even when you find that you are mistaken or do not know the information, can help you build better connections to the information once you get feedback. Flashcards allow you to gain quick feedback on whether or not you know the content you are studying. When you encounter a flashcard where you struggle to remember the answer, it is important that you do not cut corners by immediately checking the back of the card for the answer. Give yourself time to reflect on what you know about the question on the card, as the increased effort will better help you remember the content in the future, while the shortcut of simply looking at the answer may accidentally lead you to falsely believe you have mastered the content. Think, Pair, Share is a group study activity where students take a set of questions, think about the answers, pair up with a study partner to discuss what they think, and then share their answers with the study group. Study groups using this strategy should make sure the questions they work on are varied and that study sessions are spaced. The act of working with a partner and then sharing what you both know with a larger group will allow you to gain immediate feedback. Peer review is an important tool that you should utilize, even if you choose to simply work in a two-person study group. So what all have we learned today? We covered that mass and block practice are ineffective study strategies. Retrieval, spaced, and varied practice are effective study strategies. And finally, we covered study strategies that you can use that use these effective study strategies, such as self-testing, using flashcards, and using Think, Pair, Share group study sessions. As a final activity, I would like each of you to identify study activities you currently use that use both ineffective and effective study strategies, and see if you can come up with your own study strategies that rely on the effective study methods that we have covered today. That's it for the day, everybody. Hope you have a good day.